there. I forgot to put my mic down. I do this like every other time. And then I have to fiddle with it on screen, and it's awkward. So, I'm going to give a minute or two for people to show up. And, hopefully, once some people get here, I can answer some questions. In the meantime, I'm going to post on Patreon and everything that I'm live to make sure that everybody stops by. Who is able to, anyway. Today I'm just planning on working a little bit on the ethics and morality exercise, and showing what we got done for the power exercise, as those are the kind of like prime things I have waiting to get done. Having this unfortunate thing where Patreon is like a big pain to log into. And I guess I had accidentally logged out of it. But as the Patreons are the ones who make this happen, I do have to go ahead and hop on and let them know that I'm live. If I can get my password right, which would be a miracle. If you happen to stop in, please do say hello. I'm gonna start bringing up documents and doing the things I gotta do for them. We did release an episode this week, which I was really excited about. It's an episode on power, which we did the exercise for on the last episode of the stream, and I think it turned out pretty well. So definitely excited about that, because we really want to get back on track, even though John is now, away from home a lot more. It was much easier to get episodes out whenever we were both doing Leading with Class kind of full time. But we aren't both doing that. And it definitely does impact the ability to get episodes out. And I swear I'm not stalling. I just forgot my password and had to do the weird verification thing. But I like to just keep chatting while I'm waiting for some people to show up, because it's lonely to work by yourself. We are reaching the point where we are basically planning future seasons, and we're really at the point where we need to be seeing some engagement for those to happen. We have backers on Patreon, which is wonderful, and we super appreciate it. And we need to get more subscribers on our YouTube channel, which is hard because it has one of those terrible URLs, but that's why we need more backers to subscribe there, more other people who might not back our Patreon to subscribe there, so that you see our videos when they come out, and also so we can eventually get a custom URL, which will allow us to say, youtube.com/leadingwithclass and direct people to our site more easily. Because, one, I personally do think that linking directly to our Patreon discourages people from going and watching our videos because they think that they're going to be backers only or something like that. And I think that it's also just hard to like engage people whenever you're under like a moniker like that's incomprehensible, basically. So that's a lot of what we've been dealing with. I saw somebody pop in and then pop out. I got excited for a second. So the ethics morality episode is a little different in that I talk about a couple of different things. So I guess it's more in some ways like the earlier episodes where I talk about like theory and concepts. And I know that not everyone likes that. But it is the only way sometimes to impart concepts in a clear way. It's hard to sometimes find games that do like, I don't know, the kind of stuff that I want people to be taking away from my leadership study and teachings. I talk about caring ethics, which is not really something in any bigger games, any more popular, recognizable games. And we are still kind of unpopular enough that I have to refer to bigger named games to like draw attention to the kind of the project itself. And, we also have to get permission if we're going to use smaller games more often than, like, just D&D or whatever, like, for the Power episode. I can talk about D&D freely. If I want to talk about an indie game, I have to get permission. In most cases. Like, I try and follow up with people or something like that, unless it's just a passing mention. But the big thing is, like, I'm trying really hard to touch on things that I think are really important. And there's not always game for that. And sometimes there's not always a game that's ready. One of the things that I talk about in the episode is the game Lincoln Green, which is by Epidaya Ravachol, who is creator of Dread, of Worlds Without Master, of Swords Without Master, of a bunch of other things, and who is just kind of overall awesome and a really cool person. And in Lincoln Green, which is kind of a Robin Hood-like game, the characters have an Outlaw's Code, Outlaw's Oath, that they have to follow. And it's really cool. I really enjoy the way that Epi has designed this, and I wanted to feature it in the episode, but it's not a finished game yet. So that was like a really big consideration. Like, this is the first time we had something that was fully unfinished that we were like, yeah, we're totally going to include this. And it was a little bit of a hard decision. But I knew that Epi would be, like, willing to share, and, like, he gave us graphics that we can show on screen, which is like super great, because we can like let people see what I'm talking about whenever I talk about the Outlaw's Oath. And I use it to talk about having a code of ethics and how it's relevant to social ethics. I'm kind of like just hoping that I'm hoping that more people will be able to understand what I mean whenever I talk about a code of ethics in an actual game, which is something I haven't really seen much of before. I have simultaneously managed to post to a whole bunch of social medias while I was talking, which is great. So hopefully soon there will be some people here. So this is a little bit of everyday life for Brie, but I forgot to take my medicine. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that out while I am sitting here so I don't forget later. So in this we talk about, basically we start talking about applying ethical guidelines to behavior using things like script change and the X card versus making personal choices based on your moral center to behave in a certain way. The difference between a code of ethics and moral center, and why ethics and morality differ in that way. And we expand to talking about a GM that and the concept of whether your GM cares for you or not, and the difference between caring about you, like, well, yeah, I care about the person. I don't, want them to be hurt. And caring for, I will actively behave to not hurt them. And, to ensure that if they are hurt, they are cared for. That kind of thing. And then we go on to talk about the code of ethics. And I talk about, like how we could exercise care in creative work in gaming, and how gaming can change you. And it's a complex episode, and I'm really struggling for what to do for the exercise, which is part of the purpose for me, scheduling time to do these specific streams, is I can get your perspective on what I'm doing, and I can at the same time be here to answer your questions. And that's like something that's important to me to be doing, and like I hope that that's coming across as part of leading with class, that we are trying to meet some of our own expectations, regardless of whether our backers and like our patrons have placed any upon us. And one of them is these streams, because I want to be available to answer questions, and I also want your input. As there's no one here for the moment, I'm going to take a couple of sips of my tea while I move over to the other document to go ahead and start working on the exercise. So I have the previous materials from the power episode here still, because I just copy it over because it's just easier. And I'll be honest, I'm particularly nervous about the ethics and morality episode. It is a lot to be like, yeah, I'm going to talk about the subject of ethics and morality for the entire gaming community and like games industry and stuff. Like whenever I'm me. And it's not that I haven't studied this and that I don't know about it and everything. But I certainly like still have a bit of imposter syndrome with it, and I also have a lot of fear of people's reactions. I think that is a peril of all, like all leaders risk that. And while I don't lead like a team of people or whatever, it's just me and John, and occasionally the people we bring in to support our project. But in a way, with the, Patreon backers and people who come and like listen to the videos, I have a role of leadership. And I also try to lead in place as much as I can. And I am constantly questioning whether I'm doing the good job that I want to be doing. So this is actually the exercise that we ended up doing for power, which was not finished up at the end of the last stream. And it is basically just a series of little like encounter, explain, and roll kind of things where you write down your explanation. And it ended up being like a really fun like little collaborative exercise for John and I to do, because John often doesn't actually work on the exercises, but I've been really burnt out lately for reasons related to running a Kickstarter and still running Thoughty and trying to figure out what to do to make leading with class flourish, because I feel like it's not right now, as well as some family stuff and health stuff. So I was kind of at my wit's end the other night, and I was just like, we need to get this episode out. Like, John was working on the editing at the time, and I was like, can you please just spend 10 minutes with me to get this done? And I had the idea of how it would work, but it was very hard to get it down on paper because of how exhausted I've been. And John was able to help me kind of narrow my focus and like bring things into light. And it just, to me, it kind of reinforces that like leaders are not islands. You are not by yourself. In almost all of the situations, you can find someone to help you. You just may have to reach out. And, you know, John could have not helped me, right? Like, that's entirely a possible thing. It's not his role in the kind of mini organization we have going. But his help allowed me to make something that I think was actually really cute and fun and explain my ideas. I think it communicated to people what the types of power were and how they worked. And I think that it was really hard for me to do it all by myself. And I think maybe one of the hardest things about leading with class is with John, you know, being away during the day more. We both have our kind of isolated skill sets where I do the, you know, starting script writing, I do all of the research, and I do, you know, the exercises and everything. And John does the make sure the script is ready for actual performance for the screen, and all of the video editing and everything. And the recording we do together, but John typically does one side of it and I do the on-screen side of it. And so we're actually talking about doing Skillshare, where John will teach me some more video editing skills, because I have some rough ones, but they're not great. Certainly not to his obviously incredibly good level. And this Skillshare hopefully will lead to our being a little bit better at like me doing some of the work whenever he's not here, filming promos if I need to, stuff like that, like little bite-sized episodes, because that's something that I've been talking about doing for a while. And I can't do them right now because I don't have the skills, but if John teaches me those skills, then I will be able to do those things. And he will always be a part of it, and he will always work on the big episodes, because those I think will always be a little bit more than what I want to do on my own, and he'll always have input because he's a partner in this. But I think the Skillshare will strengthen us, and like I think it will really like make it easier for when John can dedicate time to the project. And maybe someday we'll get to the point where it's balanced again, and we'll be able to do the episodes like we had been doing over the summer and really been enjoying it. But we'll see. This is one of my favorite mugs, by the way. It has a llama on it, and inside it says no drama, because it's a drama llama. Cool. So yeah, this was a simple dice rolling and narrative exercise that we did as a mini game for power, but it's gonna go away for this document. And I have to figure out I gotta figure out what's gonna go here. I'm just going to check and make sure that no one has tweeted at me to tell me that my stream isn't working or something. Because nobody stopped by yet, so. You know, sometimes people are busy, but sometimes my stream is broken. So I like to check. Maybe just retweet this to my other account. I think that it is like super hard to get attention on your stream sometimes, but that's been kind of the nature of the project too. We worked with the wonderful Jessica Hammer, Dr. Jessica Hammer, who helped us prepare an educator's guide to leading with class that we need to update. But I haven't really known who to send it to. And so basically that's going to be the big impetus for next season if we get to do one. And it's going to be, you know, creating a similar document and promoting the previous season as well, being like, hey, here's our first season that we did, go watch it, and then maybe back the Patreon so you can see the second season. And that's been a lot, but I have hopes. The very loud clank that you just heard was Kyrie finding a catnip toy. We bought them a whole like pack of like one for each of the 4 cats over the weekend, and they absolutely love them, but it makes them very noisy sometimes, so I apologize for that. If I try to lock them out, they scratch at the door, so it's just how it is. So the first thing I do for the exercises is I basically copy over the definitions, and I will need to check which of these definitions are mine and which are from Daft, because I cannot remember. It really bothers me that you can't use the number keypad thing for Google Docs, because like I'd really like to just put in my M dash there as it is, but reality, this is such a weird sentence, but it is. If I take out is, it'll make it easier. Hey there to everyone who stopped by. Please feel free to say hello. I am so glad to actually see somebody stopping in today. I was worried I'd be all by myself. Currently what I'm going through and doing is copying over definitions from the episode to the exercise so that people can easily access them. Ethics of care. Every definition for the ethics of care was confusing, but it's just what I had. It's what I could find. I read a book on caring ethics for school that I really did not like very much for a lot of reasons. A lot of it was very based in like the only way to be a good ethical person is to be feminine and stuff like that, which was really weird and problematic for me personally. So I fought a little bit with my teacher about it, but I liked the overall care ethics kind of model, and that helped, to find that part that I liked at least. I know not everyone likes the term game master, but it's like still one of the most commonly used terms. Um, and it makes this more approachable to people who play, some of the more commonly played games. So kind of gotta uh, use that and, just define it in a way that I might be able to in the future use facilitator is where I'm at right now. Um, a lot of the decision making for language in this is about basically like trying to be approachable to the largest number of people, which is harder than it sounds. And it sounds pretty hard. But, gotta do what you do. Just trying to figure out how I want Sean to format these so that they're most readable. Those should do. I think these definitions are from Daft. Yeah, Minixer, it is like super hard to be approachable. I thankfully like tend towards like more casual language and stuff which has like mixed results, but overall means I'm not overly academic for people. Um, but like terminology is where it gets kind of messy because like sometimes you can alienate people with language and terminology, and with gaming that's especially true. So I struggled really hard about whether to say game master or not in this episode, and we haven't recorded yet, so there's still a possibility it might change. Um, but considering I think I'm pitching like a D&D session as what's happening, it is most likely going to end up being game master. And that's because I know even with my audience, at least 50% of my audience is still more familiar with D&D than used to using terms like just facilitator. And it's kind of a frustrating thing as like the person writing the scripts, because like I want to, say things in a different way and like approach things differently, but don't really have a lot of luck with that. Yeah, I think that the fact that it's so recognizable is really nice. But it does have some negative connotations, as I think you and I discussed on Twitter in the past, um, about how like calling anyone your master is really a kind of uh, yucky thing outside of certain contexts, and like this doesn't necessarily need to be that context. Plus, it implies an unhealthy relationship and all this stuff. So I really waffled on it, and I'm still not entirely sure. I might change it in the last minute. We'll see. I need to resize something on one of my screens because my 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 mic is currently hiding the chat entirely, and it's very annoying. There we go. It's the downside to having the overhead mic. So I'll have to do questions and the exercise for ethics and morality. Um, I think that I want to ask like a question that really like targets people's interaction with others. So like especially like using caring ethics, like Who are some people that you or a character cares about but could potentially be more effective in working with or relating by instead caring for in current group or campaign. Yeah, using just GM is a, and I think it's an option in certain contexts. But because we have kind of a requirement that we describe all acronyms for leading with class, that's like kind of a mandatory thing that comes from John's journalism background, and my experience in corporate, basically. Like, I think having that without having other things like that might be confusing to people. But that's not a terrible idea. Like, it's a totally functional option. Yeah. I'll keep that in mind. Yeah, like, so I worked in it is very frustrating to have untranslated, unfamiliar acronyms. I've worked in a variety of fields and like different arenas. Basically, I worked in nuclear energy. I worked in government for the Army Corps of Engineers, and I worked at a college, a community college, and also at an actual like university that I also attended. And everywhere had different acronyms, and so many people did not define them in like presentations and documentation, and it was constantly a struggle. And we actually had it nearly lead to disasters, like small ones, but still disasters at some of those jobs because people wouldn't ask for clarification and would assume they knew what it meant. And because we had international employees at so many of these places, they had different assumptions of what the words might be. And once or twice that led to like measurement discussions, like you said to measure this like cm, and I thought that meant this, and it's just such a disaster. So um, I think that it really makes a difference to be clear in that aspect. And I'm really bad about it normally. Like I have to be reminded whenever I'm writing the scripts because like I am just so forgetful. Um, but John catches it every time. That's one of the reasons why he's great. Let's see. Maybe I could have people create their own code of ethics, like codify their morality. I think that would be really fun. Very challenging, maybe, but if I ask them what their moral stances are, um, maybe that'll take that forward. This can be to add to your leadership character sheet. think the balance of, I talked about this a little bit before I think you came on, main Sir, but talking about the difference between morals and ethics, and the way I put them forward is that morals are your inside, like inherent internal boundaries that can grow and change, but are still yours that you use to guide your actions. And ethics are typically codes that are placed upon you, like rules and guidelines that are placed upon you or that you place upon yourself from an external source to guide your behavior in specific situations and to kind of push yourself to a further requirement, maybe. So, like, I say whenever I ask people to use script change, I'm giving them like a code of ethics. Like, you're going to follow this boundary that I'm giving you, like these rules, a code of ethics to respect people's consent and stuff. And then inside, if I choose not to use racist content in the games that I'm making or playing, I have a moral stance and like a kind of moral place that I'm coming from as opposed to an ethical boundary. So it's maybe a little waffly, but it works for me and it helps for me to explain what I'm trying to say in the episode. In this exercise, create your own code of ethics. Using answers to your questions. Using your answers to the question about morality. Translate. Turn those moral stances into a code of ethics that you would ask your followers to stick. Your followers to respect and. I don't want to say follower again. I'll just say respect. That works. So, and then I'll have John put in like a series of like lines in the exercise. Not sure how many I want, but this should be good. Something. I really like code of ethics. They can be really wobbly and sometimes really not good, but I think that done well, they can really help to reframe things for people and make people behave in better ways. And if they're done with, an intersectional kind of approach, which I know intersectional, like the term is for specifically. I'm not talking about intersectional feminism. I'm talking about looking at the intersections of people's identities and experiences and persons and stuff. So I'm using a similar term, but I'm not saying this has to be done with intersectional feminism because that's typically for Black women and women of color. And that's something that they created, and I'm not trying to co-opt it. I think that it is like really important to kind of approach things by looking in all the different directions that we can, and gather other perspectives. If you make a code of ethics for your organization, have it reviewed by more than one person and many different types of people if possible. Um, it they can be harder to design by committee, but it is better to have multiple perspectives because one perspective will never be enough. Um, so with that in mind, share your code with others and get their perspective on how it. There we go. All right. There's that. John will be happy that I'm not getting the exercise in at the last minute next time we film. We're probably going to film sometime this week, in the next, literally, day or two, for the next episode, which is this one, the Ethics Morality episode. And hopefully John can go straight into editing and we'll be able to get it out in a timely fashion. But we did get the power episode out, as I mentioned earlier in the stream, and I was really glad because we'd just been so roadblocked by John's current work situation and my health being really in a rough state. So I'm just grateful that we're making some progress again. Before I finish up the stream, did anyone have any questions? I have another 7 or 8 minutes. I definitely could address at least one question while I'm here. I didn't see that we got any on any of the social media, but I'll double check real quick to see if anything came up. Because sometimes things happen whenever I'm not paying attention. No, doesn't look like it, but let me just check one last place. Nope. Okay. Yeah, progress is really nice. And I've been basically trying really hard to push forward, and it's been challenging, but we're making some progress. I'm fine with answering questions unrelated to the topic of the episode. I'm done with what I need to do for ethics and morality for the day. And at this point, all we need to do is film. So if any questions you have, I'd be happy to at least give a crack at them. I'm only being quiet for a minute so I can actually drink my tea. I'm sorry. Yes. So I have a approachable theory is a specific kind of blog post that people do as guests and that I do on my other site called Thoughty at briecs.com. And some people are talking about pitching to that, where it's basically talking about game design theory only in an approachable language and in simpler terms, so that other people can like comprehend it, and they have to be shorter posts, so they can't be like these big giant long screeds, because it burns people out, and it's not as approachable. So to do approachable theory pitches, you email contactbreecs@gmail.com, and just let me know what you want to talk about and everything. It would depend, if you pitched a series of 4 posts, that would really depend on what the topic was and on your writing style. Um, I'd have to see like an example like of, a couple paragraphs of what you want to write, and know what the full outline is for those posts, because that is a pretty extensive series, and it would have to depend on whether it's like broken down into pieces and like approachable or not. Because once one other person pitched a multi-post one to me, and it was just too complicated. Um, so yeah, if you lay it out and can break it down simply, we can discuss it. Approachable theory is basically like the it's like the leading with class branch of thoughty, where I try and like help people learn while I like try and do things in a simple way. And it also allows me to hire other people on to talk about stuff, because leading with class as of now and into the future is going to be mostly just me, because hiring on other educators, I just can't fairly pay them. But it's like even to bring Paul Stefko on, we like did like a kind of share of stuff. We recorded some video for him and stuff, and I don't think that at our current funding level and our current situation that we can properly pay like another educator to come in. But maybe someday. Who knows? But thankfully, I can do that a little bit on Thoughty. Bring in other designers and have their perspectives. Did you have any other questions I should ask? All right. Well, so I'm coming up to the end of my time. I think I started a little bit late. So I'm probably gonna run for another like 5 minutes maybe, just going over stuff. Uh, since you didn't really get to see the episode that I was doing the exercise from that much, Manixer, this is the ethics morality episode that sorry for my sniffles, that I'm planning on recording sometime very soon, and we talk about like the difference between ethics and morality, and talk about caring ethics and GMs who care about instead of caring for, and like applying caring ethics to creative work in games. And then I talk about Lincoln Green a little bit, which is by Epidire Ravagel, and I'm really excited about that game, in part because of the Outlaw's Oath, which is like a literal code of ethics for the characters in the game, which is like really exciting. And yeah, I like this episode. It's a little bit different in structure, but I'm hoping that people will still dig it. We'll see. think that's it for now. So I think I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Because I really need a break. My brain's not at 100% right now. But thank you, everyone, for stopping by. If you would like to check out Leading with Class, you can go to patreon.com/leadingwithclass. And you can also check us out on Twitter at leadingwclass and on Instagram at leadingwithclass. If you would like to help us out a little bit right now and can't afford to back us on Patreon, what you can do is subscribe to our YouTube channel, which currently has a impossible to describe URL right now. But if you go to our Patreon account or find through our Twitter page one of the recent links to the YouTube pages and just subscribe, it would really help us because we're trying to get to the point where we have a custom URL so that we can direct people to us more easily, which makes it more likely that schools and workplaces will approach the content that we're releasing, which means we can make more stuff. So please do check out our YouTube and our Patreon, and that's patreon.com/leadingwithclass. And if you have any questions for us, you can always send them via Twitter or Instagram or Patreon, but you can also email at leadingwithclass@gmail.com with any questions about the show, about bringing me to one of your conventions or Workplace Do workshop. And I'd be happy to listen to what you have to say and see what I can do for you. Thank you very much, and have a good day. I hope that everyone has a much better day than the last few days have been.